The postseason is here, and the Ringer NBA show has you covered with Real Ones, Group Chat, The Answer, and Ringer NBA Postgame. Check out the Ringer NBA show on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day, or hiking, or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day. And that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me on the other line, grinding my bones to make his bread, it's Andy Greenwald!
Oh, but Chris, I'm on keto now, so...
It's Succession season! Woo!
What a gift.
What's up? It's Thursday in the United States of America. Andy and I are both about to travel. There's just tremendous amount of lightning on the East Coast greeting our planes that we were about to fly into. But look, man, I saw Denzel in flight. I trust pilots. Sorry. Greenwald, what's going on with you? How you doing?
Do people remember? I mean, I know we've had a year and a half off of travel generally. Do our listeners remember that just the disparity in personality types between the two of us?
Oh, the way that we feel about flying?
Yeah. Chris is so confident. I think it is because of Flight, honestly, a movie I will never see. But you just deeply believe that everyone in the cockpit is Denzel, right?
Well,
and it's just going to make it work.
Here's a spoiler alert about Flight. Denzel's on cocaine when that happens. He's having a rough time. You know what I mean? But
that's cool. When
you see him and he's like, I'm going to roll it. And he just flips the plane and then they still land. And he saves a lot of souls that day, you know?
Wow. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I'll try to remember all the information you just told me, as opposed to the screaming word terror cloud floating in my mind of lightning and cocaine.
Andy, today we're going to talk a little bit about Loki. Second to last episode aired on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. So we'll hit that. But first, there's a couple of new shows, all of which had their trailers premiere. One of which is the apple of my eye. That's obviously Scenes from Marriage, but we're going to, we'll dip down and talk a little bit about Succession, which is only the most important thing. The reason to keep going in this crazy world is to see what the Roy family is up to.
We've said this before. We said this, I think, I was going to say mid-pandemic, but who really knows anymore? And just that, obviously, this has wreaked havoc on lives and careers, and certainly the entertainment industry. Nobody wanted Succession season 3 to be delayed.
The pilot industry, the just airline pilot industry rocked.
Totally. Thank you. Well, they've had to roll themselves Denzel style just to get through it. But I think we've said this before, that I do think, in a weird way, this has helped Succession. Or at least it didn't hurt it, because the second season was such a triumph on every level. And it was a triumph that felt cumulative, right? It built, the momentum built, and the positivity and the word of mouth and just people's just total thrill ride enjoyment and happiness that they felt engaging with this show. It really crescendoed with the end of the second season, which was both thrilling, but also just absolute razor sharp, outstanding television.
Yeah.
And a great cliffhanger, a great culmination of everything that had come before. you then add just a little bit more space in there for just in case people didn't get the memo. Maybe they hadn't caught up. Maybe they just got HBO Max. What should I watch? Oh, you've been talking about the show. It just feels like this rolling avalanche of inevitability that while on the air during 2 seasons, maybe on this podcast, it occasionally felt this way, but I'm not sure if Succession had the national consciousness belt while it was airing. I think that moment has arrived, certainly as evidenced by the gleeful reaction to this trailer, which was outstanding and delivered and seemed to briefly make everyone in the hellscape of Twitter happy.
Yeah, this is everybody's weighted blanket, man. I think that like we've really missed it. We really were waiting for it. I have 2 things to say. One is that sometimes I can't shed the record store employee. You can take the boy out of the record store, but you can't take the record store out of the boy. And I'm like, is this now going to not jump the shark, but like, is Succession now every single person's favorite show? You know what I mean? And does that change how it's perceived? Not that there's going to be a backlash, not that there's going to be some sort of like, well, it was better when it was like unaware of how people thought of these characters or unaware of like what its tropes were. But I, like that just dissolves when you watch the trailer. And the second thing I would just say is that when watching the trailer, I thought it was interesting that they started with like Kendall and Logan facing off, which could happen in episode 5 or could happen in the first 5 minutes of the season. I think if they're smart, they'll make it in the first 5 minutes of the season. I don't think that they'll wait and be like, what's it going to be like when Kendall and Logan see each other again? There is a little bit of a question I have about, will this show continue to, now that it's so big, what does it do to evolve characters or transform characters versus like, this is who this person needs to be because this is who people want to watch? Do you know what I mean? Like, right. And I'm not saying is like, does cousin Greg become like an incredibly savvy, smart guy? Or does Tom become like, a psychologist or something? I just mean, isn't it interesting to watch it and just see them so immediately be like, wow, you guys are playing the fucking hits so hard. It's like, you go to Madison Square Garden, see Foo Fighters, they just start playing Everlong. Bang.
Wow. I love that. That would be great because then I could leave.
That's right.
It would be a great night out for me in Manhattan. Could avoid some lightning. This isn't relevant to the show's success.
By the way, I'm concern trolling. I don't actually really care. I don't care if a lot of more people like Succession now than did the first week it aired. And I also honestly don't really care if Kendall grows. Like, I just want to see him say like the revolution will be televised. I mean,
it's the thing about Succession, and I think you're right. I don't think either of us have any real concern, but I do think that you're right to point out that the potential Achilles heel of the show is the fact that within a season and a half, this was not just the most memeable show, but the most spec scripted show. And I say that with love and awe. And what I mean by it is this show has an enormous cast. In terms of quotable characters whom casual fans might claim to be their favorites.
Yeah, like Jerry. Yeah, right.
Jerry. It is like 10, 14 people deep. And what that leads to is, I'm sure if people who are writing spec drama scripts to get agents or whatever, you got to write a Succession because the characters are so finely chiseled that would be fun, and also kind of doable, whether it was good enough or not. I mean, that's not up to me to say, but like that would be the move, right? And so then the concern as the show advances is that there's it'd be so easy to let almost everyone just run ISO offense, right? Once per episode, like just let everyone do their shtick, do their thing.
Right. I
think the beauty of it really, and not just the beauty of it, but honestly, the confidence comes from it, as it generally does in shows like this, from the top. And Jesse Armstrong has had the creator and showrunner has had a long track record of writing for TV and writing ensembles. And I think that his steady hand and the outstanding writing staff that he's assembled year after year has really kept it moving. You watch a scene. Here, you want a sports analogy? I know I just said ISO offense because that's something I learned when I watched Iverson 80 times a season. Chris, you remember this. It's Euro season now, but you remember the 2008 Spanish national team?
I do.
Do you remember the way they played football?
Tiki-taka, yeah.
So it was just like oh, Iniesta has it. Like, oh, Puyol has it. Oh, Sergio Ramos. It's like, oh, Xavi has it. Like every single one of these people is like the best person.
Yeah, everybody
and
gets
they're
a touch.
they're just sharing it. And they're somehow collectively moving forward. And that is the dynamic of the show that people love. As much as they, when tweeting or memeing, they love individual characters or vibes.
Favorite moment from the trailer? You got one?
I love I don't speak trailer. What is there a term for like the big act out? Like, so that moment you quoted when the woman is on the phone, relaying Logan's responses, and they include, the classic Jack and the Beanstalk line about grinding bones to make bread, and then the laughter. I loved it so much because it just reminds me, going back to Jesse Armstrong and his writers, how much they love these characters. It's delicious. They're having so much fun. The show is fun, and you feel that, it's when we talked to Sarah Snook about it too, like she couldn't wait to get back and do this. And what a treat for everybody.
She's responsible for my favorite moment, which is Shiv spitting in the book. I don't know what's going on there, but I can't wait to find out. Succession comes this fall, I believe. But did they actually attach a date yet?
I turned off the trailer before the relevant info came on.
That's right. went back to FlightAware to check weather patterns.
I spit in my laptop and closed it.
There's another show coming on HBO that I'm pretty excited about. It's coming in September, and it's called Scenes from a Marriage. The trailer went up. It's a teaser. There's very little dialogue in it. It stars Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain, and it's an adaptation of a very famous Ingmar Bergman miniseries of the same name. And it's really cool because, I don't know, I mean, we're just two voices, right? Out here in the wilderness. But what have I been saying for a really, really long time? You know me, the listeners know me. I've been saying that Bergman is sick fucking IP. And that there's a lot of places that we could go with the Bergman verse. And for me, it's obviously number one, it's what's the origin story of the Knight in Seventh Seal? You know what I mean? What's Death's original trauma that leads him to playing chess with that guy?
Who taught him to play chess?
Exactly.
Was it Bill Camp in the basement of the orphanage?
Does Death have kind of a Thanos and his daughter's vibe going? You know what I mean? What are some maybe multiversal executions of that chess match? You know what I mean? For instance, also I feel like we're just leaving, and Casey boys, feel free to hit me up. We're just leaving all the Wild Strawberries IP out there. There's a Wild Fruits universe out there that we could mine. There's wild cherries, there's wild kiwis, there's wild pineapples, all different, portraits of a professor kind of reaching a twilight age, but still kind of really invested in the fruit verse.
I love when you're there's so many places we could go with this Bergman IP. We could go to Stockholm. We could go to Malmo. We could go back to Stockholm.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, what more can one say? Yeah, it's interesting because this is one of those things. Listen, everybody listening, I don't need to prove my Bergman bona fides on this podcast. Everybody knows you. Your Criterion
library card is dog-eared. It's well worn. Yeah.
But in a way where you're reaching this point with IP where we've dug so deep into the loamy soil of entertainment that we are now pulling up the old vines, the grandfather roots. And the danger of that is we're pulling up the things that have themselves been so stripped bare, so mined, so cloned, that the original feels a little bit off. This was something that I think came up when we were discussing the Peacock adaptation of Brave New World. Brave New World is an ur-text for a lot of science fiction storytelling. And after decades of its offspring and people imitating it and inspired from it, didn't feel like there was that much new to say with the original. And we're sort of circling back on that with doing Lord of the Rings again, seeing if there's something relevant and new to say in Isaac Asimov's Foundation, which Apple is making. And Scenes from a Marriage is the independent film movement and television for the last 30 years in a lot of ways. And not just that, the people that it influenced when it was released almost 50 years ago now, are the influencers of the people who are making these things now. So it does feel like whenever we talk about trailers, there's an element of concern trolling. But that is what's kind of interesting to me about this, and because of that, it's all in the execution. Because, a hyper exacting, sensitive, microscopic surgery of upper middle class white people's emotional problems, we may have been overserved at the bar. And I'm not sure if I'm ready to go back.
If I'm concern trolling this, first of all, I'm really excited for this. Like I am.
Say the cast. Did we say the cast? Oh, you said the cast.
Yeah, Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain. And I will say it's hard to imagine people that hot being unhappy. I know that it happens. But
this is a take. I'm going to clear out. I want you to do this.
No, I'm just saying, like, honestly, I get it. Like anyone can get struck by the blues. It comes for all of us at a certain point, and not, all unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. But it's just really weird to like look at those two and be like, you two are two of the most beautiful humans who have ever walked this earth. So to watch the two of you shouting at each other and ripping off your rings and crying, it's like, guys, just look in the mirror and have a pina colada. You know what I mean?
I mean, Oscar Isaac does have his drama hair in this.
I know he does his Llewyn Davis.
His beard.
Like I'm a schlub. It's like, no, you're not, dog. Come on.
I know. I know. The thing is, originally when this was announced, it was Oscar Isaac and Michelle Williams, and I am a fan of Jessica Chastain, who is coming back for it this year, coming for the belt, coming for the EGOT with Eyes of Tammy Faye also. Yeah,
Jessica wants her corners back.
But that said, and who am I to suggest that we may have already seen Michelle Williams in a crumbling marriage 1 to 12 times? Who am I to say that? But there's a particular...
But it's like Seth Rogen gets to be like a man-child who finds who gets transformed.
But there's an energy that Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain bring to a production that I like to refer to as the Tisch Senior Thesis Show 2005. Like both of them, it's not just like they went to Prague. They went to drama school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when the vows start breaking on the large coastal rocks of reality,
if these vows are rocking, don't come a knocking.
I just, there's an element where it's just like, you just kind of want to like stand up and applaud or drink a $25 whiskey out of a plastic cup that they served you at intermission. There's something very theatrical about it. We should mention that the show was, this was adapted, reimagined, created by Hagai Levy, who's an Israeli television creator. He created the original In Treatment and The Affair.
So lighter fare then.
Lighter fare. This is what he's interested in. I don't know. I don't know if I have it in me, man. I don't know.
Okay, here's the thing. I'm in.
Yeah.
I think that much like mid-air disaster films,
right?
Our mileage may vary in this topic, but
this is a ground disaster film. This is a how fascinating do you find it to watch? Like, how fascinated are you by couples fighting as dramatic material? Because my thing is here's my thing. I think of it like tennis. Like, I'm down to watch it 4 times a year. Honestly, twice. Like, I'm not going to watch the U.S. Open, and I'm probably only going to watch. And the Swedes are very good at it. The Swedes are.
That's right. I'm only going to watch the finals of the French Open, really.
Right.
And it's going to be Nadal. But Wimbledon and the U.S. Open, I love it. Let's do it. And I'm in. I can't do it every week. I can't do it every night of the week. If you gave me 30 couples falling apart shows, I wouldn't be able to handle it.
But also, Chris, you don't. In your free time, you never go and rally a little bit. You don't play tennis.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
So I feel like, I don't. This is a good,
very layered statement you just made.
Sure.
There.
This is a good episode for things that you really love, like airplane disasters,
flying and fighting.
What we're about to, the Chris Ryan experience, what we're about to talk about with the North Water, like just things that appear incepted from your mind. I have a thing, and I say this, I'm not trying to be cagey. I do not have, there isn't a fireworks show every night in my home, verbally speaking or conflict speaking, but it's interesting. I mean, maybe I'll save this for therapy, but like it's like when you hear someone else's baby crying, some people who have kids, when their kids get out of that stage, are like, oh, well, it's okay. Like, I'm calm. You know what I mean? It still chills me to my spine. And there's something about that tenor of fighting conversation, but also just the slow, like an airplane disaster movie. You watch the plane take off, you've seen the trailer, and you know what I mean? And I think that's part of the feeling that I bring into a series like this. And there have been series like this where it's like, I know they told me to buckle my seatbelt. I know I've been handed a drink and a bag of peanuts, and I know that we will land, but that turbulence light is on. You know what I mean?
I just, I think partially it's because, I feel like I'm also like, been impacted by my wife's enthusiasm for couples fighting.
For fighting?
Well, no, when it's like,
right.
She gets excited for like the fight scene in Before Midnight, the way like Shea Serrano gets excited for John Wick to fight dudes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the way I feel about like Robert De Niro robbing a bank. Like that's how she feels about that scene. And there's like some iconic romantic arguments in cinema history, but like I think it's one of those things that's funny. It's like it's so universal. Like if you're in a romantic relationship, or not even romantic, it can be a platonic relationship, and you know how these fights can kind of emerge out of nowhere, like like a crazy out of nowhere storm or something. It can be fun to watch. I don't think that that's the entirety of the show. I don't think they're going to be fighting the entire time. We're going to watch it decay until it actually snaps. But fun times, good stuff to look forward to. I also,
Chris, before we do, when you said what's it called, the weighted blanket? Did you think of that because you watched the Mr. Corman trailer? Where that features
is
heavily?
there a weighted blanket?
Yeah, there was another trailer up today for the Apple TV.
Yeah, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt show,
series.
Right?
Yeah, which is interesting, because we've had no reason to talk about Joseph Gordon-Levitt since our, honestly abandoned Third Rock from the Sun recap pod.
I know
that I was, I had to carry you for episode after episode.
We found out that was a Patreon tier too far.
I think that's right. I was really going for it, if you will, but you
still got it.
I don't. I just lost it. But he's just kind of an interesting character because not just because of his sitcom career and is just being famous for a long time, but there was that hot minute where he was a movie star, and not just a movie star, but like he was really good in the Nolan movies. He was good in the third Batman movie. He was good in Inception, and he just took a break. My guy just took a break. Like as the only apparently healthy child star ever, he could just relax for a minute.
He
and get married,
obviously
have
wants
kids.
to make his own stuff. He's a very creative person. He had I can't remember the name of the company that he has, but like where it's like, basically
hit record,
yeah, where it's like a whole community of artists making stuff all the time. And I'll be interested to see to the extent to which this show is an extension of that aesthetic.
It does seem to be. I mean, it's sort of it appears to be sort of a whimsical, musical or music inspired piece about a frustrated teacher who gave up on other dreams, but can still get Deborah Winger singing and dancing, which by the way, that's awesome. But there's a weighted blanket joke in it. Yeah, that's coming in August. But this is just prelude because of what you really want to talk about.
Yeah,
I'm going to let you do it.
I want to talk about the North Water because I've been handed something, and it's a dispatch from Taboo Island. Now, ordinarily, Sasha is producing us today. She's been wonderful. She matched our enthusiasm for Succession when we signed on for a Zoom. Sasha, I would usually ask Kaya to play Ashokan Farewell underneath of this monologue, but you don't feel the need to do that because it's really just about. I'm talking to Andy here, Dear Andy. It has been many a fortnight since we last corresponded. Whence I last wrote, I was venturing across the Atlantic with the homie James Delaney. It's been an arduous journey with no end, but I bring good tidings. While we both anxiously await the second season of Taboo to wash up in the new world, the North Water is going to scratch our 19th century bearded badasses on a boat itch. So this is a new show that I am very excited about, starring Colin Farrell, Jack O'Connell, and Stephen Graham, about a 19th century, I assume.
Incredible.
Didn't time check that. Whaling expedition somewhere very cold. It's written and directed by Andrew Hay, who did I think The Weekend. Is that the name of the
movie's
film?
called Weekend. Yeah,
Weekend.
great film.
And is just like an incredible filmmaker.
It created and directed a lot of Looking.
Yeah.
A show we were just reminiscing over because Murray Bartlett from Looking is in The White Lotus, which is premiering on HBO this weekend.
I will say the North Water is playing to an audience of one. I mean, there may be more people there, but like few people are as ready to watch shows set in the 19th century on boats as I am.
It's incredible. I mean, I don't know. We never really did a follow-up because I think longtime fans and Grantland readers know your prevailing thesis statement, which is that the sea is dope. Mm-hmm. The frozen sea.
It's a whole other animal.
Right?
Its dopeness is honestly still up for debate. Because in the Terror, it's not so hot. You know? And in North Water, it doesn't look like those guys are having a great time.
I mean, so it's as if, though, the homies at BBC and AMC Plus, like they gathered together their creative brain trust, you know, like in a Mad Men style room. They locked the door and they were like, gentlemen, we have a new target, a target of one. And they pulled the cloth that was covering the easel. And there's just a still from the gif of you playing air guitar, you know? And it was just like, and then they like brought in some supplementary materials, and they brought in Sea is Dope. They brought in everything you ever said publicly about Taboo. They brought in every text you sent me when I stopped watching Taboo.
Which was literally like 18 lines into the Taboo pilot, right?
100%.
Yeah.
They brought in The Head, that Antarctica horror show.
Fuck yeah. Yes. Yes.
They brought in The Terror season 1. They brought in
they brought in my annual viewing of The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yes.
My more than once viewing of Mary Elizabeth Winstead's remake or reboot of The Thing.
Wow.
Yeah. Let it snow. It's so dope.
They brought in the 7 minutes of podcast audio where you explain that your favorite type of thing is when people gather in a natural setting like a beach and everything goes to shit.
Yeah.
And then they were like, what is this missing? What is the Tesla battery pack that will allow this show to flourish even in an environment? Yeah, exactly. They were just like, who is the MVP of Chris's superego? It is friend of the watch, Colin Farrell.
He is in this show. It looks like he is completely going for it. And Jack O'Connell plays the ship surgeon. I don't think
is Jack O'Connell from McMafia? Is that the dude?
That's James something. Jack O'Connell is like, he was in 47 or 7. I can't remember what the name of the IRA movie he was in.
Oh, right. Okay.
And he was in Angelina Jolie's movie. That's right. I'm blanking on like every single thing he's done.
He was the young soldier who went through hell and back.
And he was in
Scott film.
Frank. He was in Godless. Jack O'Connell was in Godless. He can't speak for most of it. Let me just say, I do think that like I want to bring surgeons back, like where you just have like a surgeon kind of like as your sidekick all the time.
Well, oh no, Chris, a disgraced surgeon.
That's even better.
Yeah.
Because I'm personally willing to sacrifice my body for a redemption arc.
What is the preferred word to be placed before surgeon in a sentence? Is it neuro? Is it highly respected? Or is it disgraced? And I think if you're watching a television show on the couch with Chris Ryan, it's the latter.
You don't want like a competent surgeon. You want a guy who's got the shakes for some reason. Yeah.
A reason we'll find out.
Especially when anesthesia is still an emerging science.
Yeah, they're still debating it. We could give you this laudanum, or you could just bite this stick for 2 hours.
Exactly.
Which would you prefer? My favorite part of the trailer, and it's great. The trailer is great. And the trailer is great in the same way like Spinal Tap is great, because you're like, we get it. And then they're like, do you? Here's 6 more shots of Colin Farrell stabbing something off camera so blood blows back on his face.
That's right.
And then with 30 seconds left, someone turns to the camera and is just like, there are no devils out there. The only devils are the ones inside of men. It's like, oh, you guys are the bad guys? You were serious about that? Didn't get that. Could you imagine the open casting call for this show was just a line of just thick-necked British dudes? Like, can you imagine? Like, any
we're gonna need you to grow
like, can I audition?
Yeah.
And they were like, no, love.
No, sorry.
No, not today.
Sorry. The role of the surgeon is filled. Yeah, I'm really excited for that. A lot of good TV coming up. We're gonna have a lot of fun. Let's have a lot of fun talking about the second to last episode of Loki coming up after this. This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. New Year's resolutions are fun the first couple of weeks. Then you kind of maybe conveniently forget about them halfway through January. No shame. It happens to us all. But this year I have a foolproof plan, at least when it comes to saving money. Just switch to Mint Mobile and you're done. Goal accomplished, because for a limited time, their wireless plans are $15 a month when you buy a 3-month plan. The great thing about Mint Mobile is there's no jaw-dropping monthly bills or unexpected overages, and all plans come with unlimited talk and text. Get this new customer offer today at mintmobile.com/watch. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, Andy. This episode of Loki, very enjoyable. Just delightful to see Richard Grant and an alligator chewing scenery, quite literally in some cases. Was to some degree, I thought it did a little bit of like running in place to get to the whatever the finale is. Obviously, we get the big moment at the end of the episode where it's like the doors are opening and then we have to wait for the next episode to find out what's going on. I gather from my work online that I've been doing in terms of educating myself about this whole situation that Loki's going through, that this was maybe like frame for frame the most marveliest Marvel hour ever. Like there was so much stuff in there that if you are reading Avengers number whatever or Thor this or whatever, like you were just like, I'm in heaven.
Yes and no. And I say that as someone who is aware of some of the Marvel stuff, but just generally a bigger fan of what the show is doing. And the reason I say yes and no, it's because there were a lot of Easter eggs, but they were very specifically chosen, I think, to fit obviously the interests of the creative team of the show, but also the vibe of this story. And what I mean is, I think a lot of people online, and we always say this with a caveat, I think that if this is how you get enjoyment from this, then like that's awesome. That seems both fun and time consuming. But pour over every frame of a Marvel entertainment in search of not just Easter eggs, but clues that will make up a crumb trail towards what's coming next. This isn't that kind of Easter eggs. This was a brief glimpse of Frog Thor, which is a thing that happened in a funny comic book. There is a glimpse in the background of a Thanos helicopter, which is a sort of wink towards a 1960s comic before Thanos was like the true big evil of the universe who's in love with his true mistress Death, and he had a helicopter. You know what I mean? Like, so it's the same sort of winking whimsy that I love in the twisted and convoluted 60-year history of Marvel Comics, and that I think this show loves as well. And I just continue to be impressed by the fact that the show is telling an emotional story that is doing massive retconning of a major character. But also, while the stakes are going higher and higher, has Richard E. Grant in the Loki costume from the 60s in bright green spandex. It has, important dialogue that it gives to an animated clock. Mm-hmm. And it has. And this
actually
is the
like
ultimate
a weirdly emotional moment with that clock when it was like looking for the file, and I'm like, oh shit.
Yes, it was kind of wonderful. And ultimately, Alligator Loki, which sometimes you just got to respect the commitment. The thing that made that good wasn't just that Michael Waldron or the writer's room or whatever were like, also an alligator. It was that every time someone said something important or portentous, it went reaction shot, bang, bang, bang. Richard E. Grant, Kid Loki, sometimes Sylvie, Alligator Loki. It treated the alligator like a member of the ensemble. And for that, I salute this show.
They made their little baby Yoda run with that gator, man. Like it was, I was like, this gator is fucking entertaining. You know, like I was really into it. I also thought they did a good Chekhov's gator thing with like, he'll bite your hand if you're not careful. And then he really goes after that Loki. That was a great Monty Python moment of like the sort of gruff Loki getting his hand bitten off. Spoiler alert, I guess, if you haven't watched it, but you're listening to this. What did you think of the episode though? I mean, are you kind of at the point now, especially with this series, but maybe the entire experiment where you're not necessarily like, the stock price doesn't change that much on a week-to-week basis?
the show is a success in my book. And the show is a success because it was as interested in earning the Loki Mobius hug as it is potentially revealing the villain from Ant-Man 3, which we should speak about in a second. That is a sign for me of a well-balanced piece of franchise IP entertainment because it has serviced the character stories and the characters along the way. I mean, the Sylvie Loki stuff, that the progression of Tom Hiddleston's performance, which is really very good and nuanced and impressive. He's still playing the same character he's been playing, and sometimes multiple versions of him, but it's distinct now from the ones that existed in the other movies in a way that is very appealing and very charming and makes me excited about potential stories. That's been my viewing pleasure. And this episode, there's a viewing of this where you could be like, it just kind of ran in place. This was the one bracketed for this world, and they had fun with it, and then they killed the world, right, and moved on to something else. But so be it. It entertained in a way that, for me, the best Marvel movies have done, and also made me care on an episodic TV basis as to these characters. That said, and I know we'll get into it, like the thumb on the scale, the Feige thumb on the scale of what does it mean and what's happening began to feel unavoidable in this episode in ways that may have disrupted some people's enjoyment.
It's been really interesting to watch over the course of these three shows, each one of which have had their very obvious and then maybe more subtle themes to varying. I have varying levels of affection for each one of them, and the tension between those themes and whatever they want to do with characters. And I think in a lot of ways, probably that's aside from the paycheck and this celebrity, the lure to get Elizabeth Olsen to continue to play Wanda in this format, or to get Paul Bettany to do Vision again, is to give them something to do outside of just like run from one room into another and say, look over there. The tension between those like emotional moments and the emotional themes of these shows and this like looming, at some point there is going to be this delivery that we get that is going to quote unquote make it worth it, or explain everything, or set something up. Because I think everybody is kind of like watching these things being like, is this eventually going to accumulate to the point where we now have an understanding of where the next 5 to 10 movies are going to go? Because I think that everybody is sort of expecting Marvel to repeat what they did from 2008 to 18. But I don't know if they're going to do that. You know, I saw recently that Feige was like, we're not signing people for 9 movie deals. Now, most actors, I'm sure, are probably like, if I'm playing somebody who's like incredibly popular and these movies continue to be the only thing that seems to matter, I'd be a loon to walk away from playing Captain America or whatever, right?
Honestly, there's an economic model that we're not privy to behind that makes that make sense for them. Like, because there was the cost-effective version of it, right, where it's like you lock someone down, and especially I think they got what a return they got on their investment in like Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston. But I think the example for me, certainly from the Thorverse, is Natalie Portman, who was like, that was a weird thing that didn't feel that fun. So I'm good. I'm going to go back to Oscar bait. And then all of a sudden Taika takes over and it's like, why don't we give you the hammer and just have a blast? And she's like, yes, why would I not do that? And they are in that position now. So
I guess we're alluding to this idea, and this is to come up with, in WandaVision, it was like, who's Monica going to go meet? And everybody was like, is that going to be Reed Richards? And then
that's your jam.
Well, that was a very exciting 10 days on the internet where it was just like, how the fuck is this going to, and then in Falcon and Winter Soldier, it's like, who's the power broker? In this show, it's who runs the TVA, who invented the TVA. Are you indulging in these theories at all? Or do you have a Clubhouse favorite?
Well, I think there's 2 ways to answer that question.
And do you
first
care?
is to, well, okay, then I'll answer that too. I think the first way is to sort of run right at internet speculation, which has a good reason for existing, and that it's Kang season. And Kang is a very long run. I mean, I think created in the 60s, Kang the Conqueror, a 31st century scientist and adventurer who becomes obsessed with time travel and the time stream and keeps showing up and screwing things up for the Avengers. And sometimes he's maybe related to Reed Richards. Sometimes he comes back and a kid version of him becomes Iron Lad, the young Iron Man that leads the Young Avengers. I mean, it's a very convoluted history. There are 3 reasons why it's very plausible that that's Kang's castle or Kang is behind the TVA. One is that Jonathan Majors, the actor who is now free from any responsibilities he might have had
from Lovecraft Country,
Lovecraft Country, was cast as Kang. So Kang is coming. Kang is a thing in the MCU and is slated to appear in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which is probably filming now and will be out, I think, next year. Kang is obsessed with time and time manipulation and time control. So is this series. If there is going to be a man behind the curtain of something like the TVA in the MCU, it ought to be Kang. 3, and this is something that even your boy, Deep Cuts over here had no knowledge of or noticing of, is that, I don't know if you noticed this, but like Gugu Mbatha Raw's character in the first episode, as far as I know, was just called like Judge, like Time Judge. And then last week they called her by her first name for the first time. And I was like, oh, okay. And then this week, everyone kept saying Renslayer. Ravonna Renslayer is here. Oh, let's go. And I was like, oh, did they circulate some new paperwork that everyone needs to say her name more? But of course, they were saying it to be noticed so that people would Google it and realize that character's name is a prominent character in 60 years of Marvel storytelling as the true love of Kang. Yeah. Kang is constantly chasing this woman. Now that she's
talking about scenes from a marriage, am I right?
Yeah, I would rather watch that one. But she isn't in the TVA. She isn't a Minuteman turned judge. I mean, that's all folded into this show in the way that I think the best MCU projects do. The sky monster with a name that I misheard for the entire episode.
Aelith is right, something like that is a thing from a random Avengers side story from 2004. So they are harvesting stuff and using it, and maybe using it better than it was used in the comics. But anyway, all this is to say, yes, all signs point to Kang. However, we have now watched almost 3 complete MCU shows, and the lesson, if we could draw one, is that there might be feints and hints and moving of chess pieces for future big screen exploits. But so far, what happens on TV stays in TV. And the much more likely outcome here is another Loki, right? Because the show's called Loki. There are a lot of Lokis. And maybe the goal here is to have this variant Tom Hiddleston be the one true Loki to lead them all. That would emotionally make sense with the show we've been watching and the type of storytelling we've been seeing. Would it be cool to see a Marvel supervillain and Jonathan Majors, who I like a lot as an actor, sitting on a throne in there? That would be exciting. Yeah.
But if we are considering this as the first season of a TV show, wouldn't it be disappointing ultimately to be like, I know you love this. You'll love it more in Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania, which I think would feel like a letdown. I feel like this show has a chance to say one thing and be done with it, and I think I would prefer that.
Okay, I agree with you. I mean, I think that we're getting a little too precious with how we learn about this stuff. Maybe Marvel is. I think Marvel, I can't remember the exact sequence of it, but Thanos showed up. What he looked like evolved slightly, I think, over the course of those stingers, right?
Thanos was in the end credit sequence of the first Avengers in 2012 before Josh Brolin was cast.
Exactly, right. And I think for a lot of people that probably meant a lot. And then for a lot of people who saw Avengers, they were like, I don't know who this guy is. Seems like serious though. So I kind of do wonder whether or not he's got to play his hand eventually, a little bit, because it's not necessary. I agree with you. There is a completely successful version of Loki that has basically another Loki on the other side of that, or whoever. But this seems like there's too many signs that it's building towards something for it to never build towards anything. The momentum goes. I don't think it's all just the creation of people who speculate too much online to be like, this is setting up the multiverse, and then it's also setting up Mephisto and setting up this guy, and Reed Richards has to show up. that feels like it's gonna happen.
They know better than we do. They have a plan. And I think what makes the plan a good one is that they probably have multiple plans, and they have contingencies, and they have if-thens all over, the heavily guarded whiteboards in Marvel headquarters. But if you do not just read the tea leaves, look at the entertainments they're making in terms of the multiverse and the time travel that was in Endgame, and the folding in and doing it in a kind of witty, winking way of these other universes, the Fox universe of X-Men stuff and the Spider-Man stuff and the Sony stuff, how it's all kind of sharing space. And we hear about the Spider-Man movie is probably going to have that Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man meme moment. We all know Miles Morales is coming in some form or another. And they've been very coy about what the next giant story is. Like, what could top what they did with Infinity War and Endgame? Where could it be going? What is worthy of the Avengers again? And the thing at the end of this is probably, if they can pull it off, and there's no reason to think they can't, some version of Secret Wars, where they get everybody and they all have to fight to fix this timeline that they've spent however many years, having a ball destroying.
Right.
That feels like a place where all of this could go, but it's not going to go there in next week's Loki. It's not going to get there in Quantumania. I think that they've been smart to just lay the breadcrumbs, make everything feel equally important, which lowers the temperature, but also shares the heat among all these projects. And then, we get through the next couple movies that got delayed. We see what Eternals is about and if that even works. And by the time we're on the other side of that, I bet something significant will be announced that will lead us to whatever comes next.
You got to be as zen about Marvel. Like, you got to be as zen about flying as you are about Marvel.
That it's just going to be fine. not to get too high or too low.
We can wrap up the Loki stuff there. Andy and I are back on Monday for an episode we already recorded where we react. We did a listener mailbag, which is great. You guys sent great questions in. We also talked a little bit about the first episode of White Lotus, which is the new HBO show that's coming, I believe, on Sunday night. That comes from Mike White, who you might know and love from his work on Enlightened. And yeah, we have a lot to say about that show. I think it's best for you guys to see it first, but we just wanted to give you a heads up that we will be talking about that on Monday.
Yeah, it's an enjoyable watch. It's an interesting watch. It's set at a Hawaiian resort, so it is a pretty watch. And it sparked a pretty good conversation about a lot of different things. We should also note, I don't think anyone wants more Marvel talk from us at this moment, but because of our travel into the eye of the storm,
that's right.
We will not be covering Black Widow on Monday, which is releasing tomorrow and on, the tiered $30 on Disney Plus. So we will watch it. We'll talk about it maybe by Thursday, but we will not be covering it on Monday. And I'm so sorry because Chris, I don't think anyone else on the internet's going to cover Black Widow this weekend.
Will you be watching Gossip Girl with me?
Do you want a polite answer or the truth?
I guess I want a little, give me a little bit of both. Give me the polite, truthful answer.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't watch the first one. I would just be lost.
Oh, I thought you were a big, you were like XOXO for life.
No, I was living it.
You were such a Blair. Yeah.
Chris, the downtown Demimonde was my playground at the same time. And I was like, I need a break from reality.
Thanks so much to Sasha for producing us today. We will be back on Monday with that episode we mentioned, and then hope you guys have a great weekend.
Safe travels, Iceman. See you in the skies.